If you have any questions during the presentation, if you look at the top of your screen, you'll see a Q&A window. Please put your questions in the Q&A. If you don't see a Q&A, then put your questions in the chat window. At the end of the session, we will have a Q&A at the end, and Marty and I will answer any questions that you have. So good morning and welcome to Training Bytes. My name is Gina Thomas. I'm the training manager at C&K Systems, your hostess for Training Bytes, a digestible approach to counterpoint training. And joining me today is my trusty sidekick, Marty Katz, who's a project lead here at C&K Systems. He'll be around to answer questions or to give input that I may have forgotten.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. You've probably noticed, all of you, that there's just so many reports in Counterpoint. You see them under point of sale, inventory, purchasing, customers. But there's two reports in Counterpoint that are my go-to reports and satisfy the vast majority of my reporting needs. And those are sales analysis reports and merchandise analysis report. So how do you know which report to run? Like which report will show you multiple data types, not just sales, but more information than sales. And then I've noticed when I'm working with people, when they go to build a merchandise analysis or a sales analysis, they set all their switches and they set their filters, run the report, and the next time they want to run the report, they have to set everything from scratch. There is a way that you can set all your switches and your filters and then save the report so that later on when you want to run it, all you need to do is load it. Saves you a little bit of clicking. So we'll talk about that today. So I'm going to show you how to create and save merchandise analysis, how to recall them, the inventory history report, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about returns reports and void reports, just so you can monitor any potential loss. So let's start with sales analysis and merchandise analysis. Sales analysis will only report on sales. So there's not a mechanism in sales analysis to see sales and on hand or on order or received, or it is strictly sales. But a feature of sales analysis is that you can have comparative dates, up to 3. Any 3 date ranges that you like, and we'll look at that a little bit later. Now, merchandise analysis will let you have multiple data types on one report. So what's a data type? Sales is a data type. On hand is a data type. Purchasing, receiving, transfers, those are all data types. So in a merchandise analysis report, you can have more than just sales, or maybe you just want to see on hand and received. Perfectly fine. A feature of merchandise analysis is that you can have location detail show on the report as well. Sales analysis doesn't do that. If you want to look at all your stores because you have more than one, sales analysis will combine those figures. Merchandise analysis will break them apart. The other thing that merchandise analysis features are KPIs. That's fancy for key product indicators, things like your weeks on hand or gross margin return on investment, stock to sales, all available in merchandise analysis. So when it comes to sales analysis, under sales history reports, sales analysis by group, the first page you come to is a parameters page. You can see this parameters tab here. And the first thing you want to do is make some decisions. So at the top here, you can use the report dropdown and select a traditional report, which is only 5 columns, a 7, 10, or 11 wide. I usually stick to the 7 because it fits nicely on 8.5 by 11 paper. Then on the group by. So when you go into sales analysis by group, you're clicking on one button, it looks like one report, but there's actually many, many reports. And so the group by dropdown will show you all the reports that are available that you can modify with the quantitative values you want to see. There's item-driven reports, customer-driven reports, but my favorites are the ticket history line type reports and the ticket history reports. So what's the difference? Think of a receipt. when you look at a receipt, it has three parts. It has a header, and it has a footer, and it has a body. So your header and footer have like summarized information, date, time, cashier, subtotal, tax total. Your body of the receipt shows the merchandise that you scanned. So how that relates to the group buys, typically a ticket history line report will be merchandise related, and typically a ticket history report will be header footer related. Once you've set your parameters, you can go to the Select Columns tab and select your quantitative values. And I'll get to that in just a moment. What I do want to point out to you here on the Parameters tab is this print defaults to top 10 when you select a report on the group by line. You don't have to leave it at top 10. If you use the dropdown, you can select all, or maybe you do want top 10. Maybe you want top 11 or top 12. Maybe you want your bottom 10 or bottom 100. You can change all that on the print dropdown. Print in order by, how do you want the report to arrange itself? So print in order by item number on an item report is actually going to print the report sales by item in item number order. Not all that practical. I like to arrange the report either by quantity sold or by sales. The item that sold the most will pull to the top, that sold the most units, or the item that collected the most dollars will pull to the top. And then you can see these three comparative date ranges. They can be any date you like. We'll take a look at that a little bit later. Down here at the bottom, I just have my main store selected. So a limitation of this report is if you do have more than one store, you can certainly click on all stores, but that's going to combine all stores together. So my East plus my Main equals this value. So it doesn't break them out. So if you need to see sales separately, you need to run the report separately for each store. So once we've made that decision, now we're ready to select columns. If you look at this screenshot, the available columns are what's available to put on the report. They are all quantitative values. You will not find any descriptive values like vendor item number, category, description. It's all numbers and money related. And then once you select your columns, you can optionally filter using the ticket history tab, the ticket history line tab, or the item tab. So if you leave those filters blank, then the report will return everything sold within that date range. So if you don't want to see everything that was sold, maybe you just want to see a certain category or a certain vendor, then use your filters. When you're done selecting your columns, setting your parameters, if you don't want to do that from scratch every single time you run a report, just go to Options and choose Save Parameters. Once the parameters are saved, the next time you want to run the report, you'll just go to Options and Load Parameters and select the report you saved. When you do save the parameters, you're going to give the report a name on the report name line, and also you're going to give it a description. It makes it a little easier to pick out under Load Parameters. And when you are typing in a report name, it's going to look like Counterpoint's overwriting another report, but it really isn't. It really is creating a unique report, and we'll actually see that in action in a few minutes. Merchandise analysis. This is where I can have multiple data types. Sales on hand, on order, or maybe just on hand and on order, or on hand, received and on order. But just like in sales analysis, you come to a parameters tab where you need to make some decisions. One decision is the analyze by. You only have two selections, group or item. Group is going to be a very summarized report, sales by category or on hand by category. Item is going to be very granular, each and every item. Now, unlike sales analysis, a feature of merchandise analysis is that you can group the report by category or by vendor, which is very nice. You can't do that in sales analysis. Again, print is going to default to top 10, but you can make that any value you like, top 11, bottom 12, or all. Rank by, how you want the report to arrange itself. And then down here, the date range. So a limitation of merchandise analysis is you can't have comparative date ranges. You can only have one. Oh, I went a little too fast on that, so let's go back here. Okay. On the right-hand side of the screen, all locations. So if you're multi-store, the merchandise analysis report will combine all stores together. But let's say you are multi-store and you want to see a breakout of each store. Sales, on hand, on order. There's a switch down on the lower half of this screen in this report box where you can enable show location detail. So we'll break out each and every location. Or you can just select a location group. Maybe you've got your multiple stores segregated by maybe region. Or you can just have a specific location. When you're done making decisions on the parameter tab, you'll click on Select Columns. And the very first thing you want to do in Select Columns, under Available Columns, there's a switch that is not enabled by default. You want to click on Show All Columns. It gives you more quantitative choices. But the choices you have, just like in Sales Analysis by Group, are quantitative. You won't find any descriptive values under Select Columns. No vendor item number, no description, no category, etc. Then you have your Item and Inventory tab. That's for filtering. So if you don't want the report to return everything that's on hand, you can actually filter for a category, a vendor, whatever you like. And then when you're done, you're going to go to Options, just like you do in Sales Analysis. You're going to save the parameters, give the report a name, and then when you're ready to run the report at another time, you will go to Options and Load Parameters. Some other helpful reports, Inventory History Report. It's literally an audit trail of every transaction that affected an item. How did my costs get to be this value? How did my on hand get to be this value? The Inventory History Report is going to tell you that story. Then something I recommend that you run on a regular basis are your return tickets report and your voided tickets report. You want to establish a norm. How many returns do I have in a month? How many voids do I have in a month? And if you run these reports and that norm changes, it might be something you want to investigate a little more closely. All right, let's go ahead and get into the software next. And I'll just minimize that. Open up Counterpoint. So I'm going to start with Sales Analysis by Group, Sales History, Reports, Sales Analysis by Group. You can see I made it a favorite, so I don't have to remember where it is. So when I load the report, the first thing I'm going to do is decide, do I want the traditional 5 columns, 7, 10, or 11? Again, I recommend the 7, just fits nicer. Then I'm going to go to Group By. These are all the reports, customer reports, item reports. But I want to do an item sales report. So I'm going to go to Ticket History Line, and I'm going to choose Item Number. Now my print defaults to top 10. So if I want to see everything, I'm going to make it all. Or maybe I want to see items that aren't performing very well. Again, it defaults to bottom 10, but you can make this any value you like. I'm just going to set it to all. Print and order by. By item number is not practical, because it's just going to print everything in item number order. So I like to use this drop down, and there's 2 values I like the best in here. And the values I like are quantity sold. So if I print an order by quantity sold, the item that sold the most units will pull to the top. Now, this is pretty important, especially if you're doing a top and bottom, because if you do top 10 and it's just set to item number, it's just going to give you your first 10 items. But if the print and order by is quantity sold, you'll get your top 10 based on units sold. The other one I like is this one called sales. I like this because it's your true raw net sales after discounts before taxes. And so if I select this in the order by, the item that collected the most dollars in this date range will pull to the top. Then down here, I have my date ranges. Remember, we can do comparative. That's a feature of sales analysis. And when I choose time B, it defaults to last year, month to date, and C defaults to the year before, month to date. You can make these any date ranges you like. Speaking of date ranges, I'm a big fan of dynamic dates. So if I choose something like month to date for my report and I save it, anytime I load the report, it'll automatically default to the current month to date range. The same with year to date, quarter to date. Now, a question I get a lot is what's the difference? I see month to date company, week to date company. If you're using a standard calendar in Counterpoint that runs from January to December, these are the same. If you have a fiscal calendar defined in Counterpoint, my fiscal year runs from October to September, then month to date company, week to date company, year to date company will look to your fiscal calendar. I'm going to change this to year to date because I don't have a lot of sales this month. So, and I am set up on a standard 12 month, so it doesn't matter which one I choose, but I'm just going to go ahead and choose this one. Down here, I want to run this report for my main. I could click all stores because I do have 4 stores, but that means all the sales are going to be combined. I'm not going to see a breakout for each store, but I am going to just change that back to main. Okay, next I'm going to go to select columns. Okay, so sales is definitely something I want to see. Again, true raw net sales after discounts before taxes. But something else I'd like to see on my item sales report is cost. So I'm just double clicking on it. Just double click. Or, if you want to remove it, you can double click. Or you can highlight it and click on the arrow. This is averaged cost, by the way, not last cost. And I get this question a lot. Gina, I'm looking at my sales report and the cost of that item is different than the last cost on the item record. That's correct, because the cost on all your sales reports is from average cost. The other thing that I want to see is quantity sold. So again, I'm just going to double click on it. And if you look down here, it's showing you that I've selected 7 out of 7 columns. Now, if I do select another column, see how it turns red? You can have 8 if you want. I'm just going to leave it at 7 though. Now, I want my cost to be in a different position. I could hold down my left click and drag it, but it doesn't give me a lot of control. So another way you can move it is just highlight the element and use this move up button or move down. The dollar rounding, I typically uncheck, and that's just a me thing. If I sold $23.56, that's what I want to see on the report. So if I uncheck dollar rounding, I will see $23.56. If I enable dollar rounding, then I'll just see 24. Or if it's $23.25, I'll see 23. Quantity rounding only applies to people that sell fractions. So I buy coffee by the pound, but I sell it by the half pound or the quarter pound. And so when I'm running my report on those items, I want to see that fraction. I don't want Counterpoint rounding it. If you don't have that situation, it doesn't matter whether it's checked or not. This is a filter, this is a filter, and this is a filter. So if you don't want to see everything, you can always filter for a particular category, maybe a particular vendor, whatever you like in the filters. Now, once I'm done making these decisions, I am going to run the report just to see how it looks, because maybe I want to do a little tweaking after that before I save it. So I'm just going to click on preview. And here's my report. And because I ranked it by sales, the item that I sold the most, collected the most dollars on, is what pulls to the top. Then I like this percent to totals. You will not have a percent to totals column if you have an 11 wide report. It just disappears. So 7 wide, 10 wide, you'll see the percent to totals automatically. And what I like about this is it kind of gives me a nice view. So what it's telling me here is, out of all the backpacks you sold in this state range, you can attribute 31% of those dollars to this item. So it's a pretty nice feature. Any report you preview anywhere in Counterpoint, you can't just scroll to the next page, but you can use these arrows to get to the next page. Or this will take you to the last page so you can see your grand totals. Any report that you preview anywhere in Counterpoint can be exported with this envelope at the upper left. So when you click on it, you can choose a format, any format you like, as long as you have that application. And then you can choose a destination, whether it's, to your desktop or your C drive or the actual application itself. Another handy thing to know about being in a report preview, sometimes you run a report and it turns out to be 400 pages and you're looking for something specific in the report. You can always use these binoculars. So if I just type many, you can do a partial word if you like. Maybe I'll just type, maybe I'll just type backpack. See how Counterpoint finds the plaid mini backpack? And that's all I have there. And you can actually search for any value here. Maybe you're searching for something that's, I'm going to go to the top here. Maybe you're searching for something that is $105 in sales. So I'll just type 105. So you can see Counterpoint finds it. It's that little darker blue. And I can look for the next one. There aren't any. And again, any preview anywhere in Counterpoint. I'm happy with this report, so I want to save it. I'm going to go to Options, Save Parameters. I'm going to give the report a name. I'm going to call it Sales. See how it looks like I'm overwriting a report? I'm really not. I'm creating a unique report and a unique name. And then I'm just going to copy this. You can right-click and copy or do Control-C. Then you can right-click and paste it under the description or do Control-V. And now I have my report. So later on, when I want to run the report again, maybe another day, I can just come to Sales Analysis by Group. I can go to Options, Load Parameters, and there's all my saved reports. So I'm just going to call up the Sales by Item report. And I'm going to click on here down here at Load. Now let's say on the fly, I want to change something. I set this to print all. I said to order it by sales, and I said to run it year to date. But you know what? Just for today, I feel like looking at my top 15. And I feel like running this quarter to date. As long as I don't save anything, this is all temporary. Maybe I didn't have a filter saved, but this time I'm running it, I just want to see a certain category or vendor. So feel free to make those changes on the fly, use your filters, because after you run the report, as long as you don't save it, it'll revert back to the way it was when you originally saved the report. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So here on my parameters, top 15, quarter to date. So now I'm just going to exit without saving anything. So now when I come back and I reload that report, see how it went back to all in year to date? But what if this happens? Let's say you load this report and you do want to see your top 10 or 15 or whatever. And you don't want to have to change this flag every time you load this report. You could save it as its own report. So you could, change this to top 10, options, save parameters, and you could call it top 10 sales by item. And then again, I'm going to just copy that, Control-C, and I'm going to put it down here in my description, Control-V, and save it. So now when I go to options and load parameters, here's my top 10 sales. This is why I like putting in a description when you save your parameters, because it populates this column over here. And if you don't put in a description, not the end of the world, but you'll have to rely on the report parameters column to find your report, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. So then I can click on load. There's my top 10, preview or print, and I'm good to go. Some other helpful reports that are already in here that you might want to customize with your own quantitative values. If I come down to ticket history, there's a sales by hour. This is great for staffing planning. Sales by month, sales by month and day, all good for staffing planning, to control your payroll. So I do want to have these reports already saved. I'm just going to go to options and I'm going to load the parameters. And I'm just going to find my sales by hour report. So you can see here it's ticket history hour. I want to see everything. I want the report arranged by hour. Now, I have it set to year to date, but maybe I'm just getting ready to write my schedules for the holiday season. So I want to see sales by hour for last December. That give me a good idea of how I need to staff. Okay, so now I'm going to preview. And I can see last December, my busiest hour was between 12 and 1 for the entire month. So that might be where I need to staff a little bit heavier than I do, say, from 7 to 8 or from 2 to 3, or especially from 1 to 2. I also saved a report by month and day. So when I load that, so I got the report from this dropdown, month, day. I want to see all. I want to arrange it by month and day. And I'm just going to do month to date today. Okay, so you can see I've only made one sale. Oh my goodness, that's sad. Maybe I want to see year to date on this one. So I'm just going to change the state. Oh, not yesterday, year to date. Here we go. So then you can see the month and every day, the sales, the cost of the sales, the quantity sold. So when it comes back to that December time frame or cruise season time frame or back to school, you can run this for, that length of period that usually encompasses cruise or Christmas or back to school, and kind of get a general idea of where you need to staff heavier, what days of the week. For most people, it's going to be Saturday, but not for all of you. Okay, so that's sales analysis by group. I can only get sales in that report. But what if I want a little more? Sales and on hand, maybe. That's always very helpful. So I'm going to go home here. I'm going to go to inventory and reports. Merchandise analysis. Again, I made it a favorite, so I don't have to look for it. And just like with the sales history, I need to make some decisions, but there aren't pre-built reports in here, so just less decisions to make. So the first decision is, do I want this to be summarized or do I want it to be detailed? Group is going to be very summarized. Item is going to be detailed. Print defaults to top 10. I want all. I can rank it by the number of transactions, so that pulls to the top. And here's something you can't do in a sales analysis, and I like the fact that it is here in merchandise analysis. You can group the report by vendor or by category, or even category and subcategory. You can't do that in a sales analysis report. So I'm just going to group this by category. Okay, order by, it's just going to work with the rank, but you can change that. Now, here's a limitation of the merchandise analysis report. We can only have one date range. So you can't have comparative like you do in a sales analysis. This defaults to all locations. So if I just leave that alone and don't do anything else, all my figures will be combined for all my stores. So if I want to see a breakout, I'm going to come down here to show location detail. Or, maybe I just have a group. I've got one group here called all stores and another group called Main and East. Just choose a specific location, but I'm going to choose all. My dollar rounding and quantity rounding switches are over here on this first page. I'm going to uncheck dollar rounding, and then I'm going to go to select columns. Now, I mentioned earlier in the slide presentation that by default, you don't see everything there is to see. Look how big this scroll bar is. And then there's a statement, show all columns. So if I enable this statement, see how small the scroll bar gets? It just gives me a lot more quantitative choices. And again, these are only quantitative values. So my visible columns, sure, I want to see the number of transactions, quantity sold, sales, cost of sales. That's great. If I didn't like any of these, I could double click on them. If I wanted to add something else, I could add something else. And notice at the bottom here, it's showing me I have 6 out of 10 columns selected. So you can have up to 10, but that might cause the report to wrap, which just makes it a little harder to read. So again, I usually stick to 7 or 8. I'm just going to take that one away. And now I'm going to preview. So here's what it looks like when you have multiple stores. You can see here I've got got my men's polo. So here you can see it East, number of transactions, how many sold, the dollars collected, the cost of the sales, remember average cost, and then the profit. And it's all broken out per store. And again, I can't scroll to the next page. I just use the arrows. If I'm looking for a particular value, I can use the binoculars. Maybe I want my mini backpack. And you don't have to type in the whole thing. You can just type in parts of it. So there it is. Number of transactions, quantity sold, dollars collected, cost and profit at the location level. Once you run the report and you're happy with it, just like in sales analysis, you're going to go to Options, Save Parameters, and you can call it Item Sales. And again, just like in the sales analysis, I always copy this down to the description so that when I load my parameters, I can see verbiage in the description column and don't have to rely solely on the report parameters. Something that I'd like to point out about some of your choices here, when it comes to sales, if I come all the way down here to where all the sales are, come on back here. There's a lot of sales values here, but the reason I like this one is because it's not theoretical. A lot of these are theoretical values. You know, if I sold at full price, what would my sales have been? So I can put one of those columns here just to compare it. You know, maybe sold price 1 retail. I'm going to move that up. So then I can see what it rang up as and then what I actually sold it for. So nice little comparison. Another thing that I want to point out too are on hand values. So when I go to quantity on hand, or I go to quantity on purchase orders, these two values do not care about this date range, do not care. Quantity on hand means right now at this moment in time, and that's true on any on-hand report that you run. It's right now at this moment in time. Quantity on purchase order means all your open purchase orders, including old, obsolete ones that are still hanging out in your open PO module. So you guys have heard me say, you know, keep your PO module clean. If something is obsolete, it's old, you're not going to get the product, make sure you cancel the PO. This is why. So if I have POs from 5 years ago with open items, they're going to show up on this report. So this is right now, this moment in time, all purchase orders, all open purchase orders. Now there is a value called quantity beginning balance and quantity ending balance. I'm going to get rid of some of these other ones, clean this up a little bit. And I'm just going to focus on one store, just so it's easier to read. Quantity beginning balance and quantity ending balance do care about the date range. So if I go to parameters, quantity beginning balance is as of January 1st. quantity ending balances as of this date. So I'm going to make this September 1st. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to add quantity on hand. I'm going to move it up. So when I run this report, quantity beginning balance is going to represent January 1st. On hand is going to represent right now, today. And quantity ending balance is going to represent September 1st. So then when I go to preview, you can see as of January 1st, this was my on hands for these items. This is my current on hand. And as of September 1st, these were the on hand values. And again, if I like this report and I want to save it, option save parameters, and then I can recall it with load parameters. There's also cost and retail values associated with these. So if I choose cost on hand, that means right now at this very moment in time. So this cost on hand does not care about this date range. It's right now. But if I do cost beginning balance and cost ending balance, like the quantity beginning balance and the quantity ending balance, these will pay attention to your date ranges. When I load the report, if I don't want to see everything, I can use the item and inventory tab to narrow down the return of the information. So merchandise analysis reports and sales analysis, like I said, satisfies the majority of my reporting needs without having to dig around into all these other reports. So sometimes when I'm looking in my inventory, I come across an item or two that something doesn't look right, like, or I run a sales report. I sold a banana and the banana cost of goods sold was $100. And I was like, oh, that's not right. And I go look at the item and certainly my last cost and average cost are off. Or my quantities are off. They don't look right. My quantity says 0, and I'm physically looking at 50 bananas. So the inventory history report will tell you how a quantity got to be that value and how a cost got to be a current cost value. So if you go to inventory and you go to reports, inventory history. Now I like to run this report by using this dropdown and selecting transaction date and type because it puts the report in date order chronologically. But maybe you don't like that. Maybe you want to group it up, all your sales are grouped up, all your receivings are grouped up, all your physical inventory are grouped up, and that's fine. I just happen to like this one. I also enable the radio button detail because I want to see each and every transaction that affected that item and caused a quantity or cost change. Please do visit the filter, inventory history. You don't want to run this report for your entire inventory. First of all, it would be extremely large and very, very overwhelming. You want to focus on your problem children. And if you got 5 or 6 or 10 problem children, just look at them one at a time. Chances are, if you figure out what's wrong with one of them, it's probably going to be the same thing with all of them. But anyways, one item at a time. Keeps the report easy to read and easy to digest. So I'm just going to select my mini backpack here. Now, if I'm multi-store and I leave the location blank, I'm going to get an audit trail for this item for each and every location. But maybe I happen to know my only question is at the main. It's the main that the quantities are off or the cost is off. So I can focus on the main. If you have a lot of history, like going back 10 or 12 years, you don't want to leave this transaction date blank because, again, it'll go back to the dawn of time. So if it's a rather new item that you've only had a couple of months, you can leave that blank. But if it's an item you've really had a long time, you do want to define a transaction date range. All right, I'm going to leave mine blank because I don't have that much history on this item. And now I'm going to preview. So you can see here, these are the documents that affected the item. If it's a positive value, then it was something that was added to the inventory. If it's a negative value, it was taken away. So for this one, -1 means I sold it. Right? If this were a positive value, it would be a return. Something I want to point out is the physical count. A lot of people think when they see this on the inventory history report, that physical count represents what you actually counted the day of physical inventory. That is not true. This is an adjustment that was made to the inventory when you posted. So for example, when I started the inventory on my mini backpack and I did my create step, there were 10, but I only counted 9. So at the end of the day, when I posted, Counterpoint did a downward adjustment of 1. So if this were a positive number, it would be the opposite. When I did my snapshot, there were 10. I counted 11. So when I post the physical inventory, there's an upward adjustment of 1. And again, just like with any other preview, scroll to different pages. You can even make these bigger. I mean, sometimes 100% just isn't big enough. You use that drop down, make it a little bigger. You can export it. Or if you're looking for something in particular, you can use the binoculars. This is actually my go-to report. Anytime somebody calls into support and says, I don't understand why my cost is this cost or why my quantity is this quantity, first report I go to. Okay, a couple of other reports that are just good to run on a regular basis. This is really loss prevention driven. A lot of people that steal from you, like your associates, unfortunately, one of their favorite methods of stealing is bogus refunds credited to their own credit card. So you want to keep an eye on your returns. So if you go to sales history and you go to reports, you have a return ticket report. You want to keep an eye on this, and a voided ticket, because that's another way people steal. There's a cash transaction that's completed, and they have the authority to void a completed transaction. So they void it and they pocket the cash. So no matter which report you run, you're going to enable item detail, because most people that are doing bogus refunds, they have a favorite item. Show payment detail, because again, most people doing bogus refunds are going to choose their credit card or have a favorite tender they like. And then this is important. You need to come to the ticket history tab and you need to put in a date range. If you don't put in a date range, you're going to get your returns from the dawn of time. Now, I don't have a lot of sales in here, so I am going to run mine year to date. I'm going to preview it. So you can see year to date, I've had 4 returns. Here's what I recommend you do. Run it for a month at a time. Look at your returns for July, and let's say there's 6. And look at your returns for August, maybe there's 7 or 5. And then you look at your returns for September and there's 20. What's wrong? Now, it could be that you have some defective merchandise come in and you sold defective merchandise, and that's why the returns spiked. Or you had a huge sales spike. If your sales spike, they just are overwhelmingly larger than July and August, then logically your returns are probably going to spike too. But again, in that example of, well, the business is flat, but yet my returns doubled, it's time to start asking questions, nicely, because you don't want to offend anybody. So, I could come to Gina here and say, hey, Gina, I see you did a return for Bill. Was he unhappy with the product? Was there something wrong with it? And then, hopefully Gina gives you an answer that's acceptable. Or you could even call Bill. Now, Bill's phone number isn't on this report. You'll have to look it up. Hi, Bill. I see you did a return. Was there anything wrong with the merchandise? Did the sales associate handle the return politely? Did they offer you an exchange? Every once in a while, you make that phone call, and the customer is going to say to you, I haven't been to your store in like a year. Time to start asking questions. Again, very nicely. When you do have a theft situation and you question somebody, it raises awareness, which is good, or that somebody will go to lunch and never come back. Voided tickets report, same thing. Item detail, show payment detail, go to the void history header, filter for a date range, and establish what's normal. Now, my voids year to date, I go to the last page, have been 6 tickets. So again, run it a month at a time, figure out what's normal, and if it spikes outside of the norm, it's time to start doing some investigating. And maybe you hired somebody new and they got ahead of themselves, or maybe something else is going on. By the way, this report is looking at tickets that were voided after they were completed. So this doesn't look at void durings or void lines. It only looks at completed tickets that were voided. So hopefully that's helpful information for you. We'll come back here. So hopefully you know now how to create a sales analysis report, how to save it, how to recall it. The same with merchandise analysis, how to troubleshoot your quantity cost issues by looking at the inventory history report, and make sure you run your return and void reports on a regular basis. On Friday, you're going to get a link to this recording, and there will be a survey attached. I always appreciate your feedback, any topic suggestions you have, or if you want to fill out the survey today, go to our website, www.cksystems.com/training bytes survey. Just a reminder, every quarter, last Wednesday of the month, we do a C&K quarterly. This month it's on September 27th at 1 Eastern Daylight. There's only one session. We're going to talk about retail operations, product updates, payment processing. The emails have been going out all week this week, so make sure you sign up and attend. And if you don't attend, sign up anyway, because if you sign up, you get a link to the recording. If you don't sign up, you don't get a link. And just in case you don't know, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So we want to make sure we're cyber aware at work and at home to protect our environment from hackers gaining access to our system and creating a lot of trouble. So this year, the focus on cybersecurity is on multi-factor authentication, signing in two ways, something you know, something you have, something you are. Passwords, complex passwords, by the way. Too many times I see people using very generic passwords like Star Wars or password. Password managers, oh my goodness, we have so many. You should have a different password for anything that you log into. So it gets hard to keep track of all these passwords, and a Post-it note is not acceptable. So there's a lot of password managers out there where you can store your passwords and then look them up when you forget them. We want to make sure all your software applications are up to date. And you want to teach everyone at work and at home how to recognize phishing, because most hacks happen when somebody clicks on a link they shouldn't have been clicking on, and then it allows malware into your system. So a really great resource for this is staysafeonline.org. If you go to their website, they have all these tip sheets about everything I just talked about. There are videos that are like 3-4 minutes long, and these are great to share in your workspace and your home space. Okay, next month, October 4th. Fun topic, touchscreen designing, in time for the holidays to get ready. I will show you how to design your touchscreens to connect buttons to items. So instead of scanning the item, maybe it's jewelry and it's too small to scan, you can just press a button to sell the item. I'll show you how to create new pages, because you can have as many pages as you like in touchscreen, especially if you're selling items by touching buttons. And I'll also show you how to create run pages, which will execute multiple tasks within the touchscreen with the click of one button. So good stuff to learn. So make sure you join me on October 4th, 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock. If you want custom training, this is custom tailored to your business on your data, which makes more sense than my golf store. Give me a call at extension 3. Email me at training@cksystem.com. Always happy to schedule an appointment. Okay, and with that, let's look at the Q&A. Yeah, I do see something in chat. Okay, so this is a good question. How can I add criteria like more selections to the available columns? You cannot. The merchandise analysis report and the sales analysis report, what you see in the available columns are all that's available. There is not a way to add more available columns. Okay, hopefully that answered your question, Jennifer. I'm going to check the Q&A next. Okay, and I do not see
Nothing new.
anything. Nothing new. Thanks, Marty, for looking. Thank you very, very much. Okay, any questions? Oh, is that true for all reports? Yeah, all the other reports that you see, you can't design, like you can sales analysis, merchandise analysis, and even flash sales you can design. All the other reports are what you see is what you get. If you want to add something that you don't see on the report, those can be customized. The merchandise analysis and sales analysis, we cannot customize. But yeah, any other report, pretty much we can. Okay. Anything else? Oh, you are very welcome. Okay, well, everyone, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it. And I hope to see you on October 4th for touchscreen designing. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.